What is going on, everyone? Welcome to my channel. My name is Hart, and today I'm going to be going over some of my favorite core plays for this championship weekend here for the NFL on DraftKings. So if you're new to the channel, hit that like button and subscribe. Going to be breaking down this slate, building out a potential lineup based on the injury news we have so far heading into tomorrow's two-game slate here. So once again, hit that like button. I'll see you guys in the video. Before I get into the breakdown, just want to do a quick little recap of my playoff lineup so far. This was the first playoff weekend. I went with the Herbert stack here with the Chargers. I got 6 out of the 9 correct plays here with Zay Jones, Austin Eckler, Christian McCaffrey, DK Metcalf, Ingram, and Everett. I was looking so good for a chance to have like a sweat for the takedown until that last game. Herbert obviously super disappointing. Palmer was terrible. And then obviously the Seahawks defense just got absolutely dismantled. So that really knocked me down, but it was an easy cash with those guys, with Zay Jones, DK, Ingram. So yeah, it was looking fantastic, but obviously I can't run good ever. So, we knew that the Chargers had to give up 31 points in the second half. Herbert does absolutely nothing. And then instead of, sweating a takedown, I just min cash. So can't complain about cashing, but it could have been in line for a huge night for me. But the following weekend, I went with Hurts, another game where I was off to a very solid start. I had Kelsey, I had Tony, and I had ETN. I was like, oh, another very solid start to my lineup. Could be in line for, a very solid weekend here once again. And of course, Cook did nothing. Boyd was terrible. A.J. Brown had his second worst game of the season. I nailed everything else. Tony was solid. Kelsey was fantastic. Goddard was good. Eagles defense was solid. I had Hurts, ETN. It's just those 4 plays absolutely killed me. Cook, Boyd, and Brown. Wanted to get, Contray into the field, and it obviously didn't work. But another weekend of cashing, so you can't really complain about that. So let's get into my 4 core plays for tomorrow. Now, looking at this quarterback situation here, guys, we have Mahomes, Hurts, Burrow, and Purdy at the top. Obviously, Mahomes, 7'6", most expensive. The biggest question mark is obviously going to be whether or not his ankle can last him this whole game, if it's good enough for him to be able to throw with extra power, be able to push off of it, cut, scramble. All that stuff is obviously the big question mark. So it really kind of just comes down to ownership for me personally. Like, if you think Mahomes is able to do enough on an ankle, we saw videos during this week of how, he's been jogging during practice. He's been able to practice. His ankle looks good enough to be decent. It's just, if you think he's going to be better than like 75% of his former self, his normal self, I think you run it with Mahomes. Obviously, he's the most expensive, but we know in this matchup versus Cincy at home, he's going to want to prove everyone wrong, especially with his ankle injury now. Everyone's kind of doubting the Chiefs. The whole narrative between everyone calling it Burrowhead, the Chiefs have absolutely been getting dominated by the Bengals with Joe Burrow. I think they're 0-3 against the Bengals. So, yeah, a lot of narratives going into this game. Obviously, the ankle issue is a huge question. So if you're one of those people that you have faith with Mahomes, you think he's going to be fine, I do think you run it with Mahomes. If not, your best 2 options, your next 2 options are going to be Hurts and Burrow. The only downside besides obviously the ankle for Mahomes is they don't have a ton of like options to throw to besides Kelsey. Like, Juju really fell off. MVS has really fallen off. McKinnon was great for a few games. He's really fallen off. They don't have a ton of options. When you have Mahomes limited now with an ankle injury, it just kind of, constricts their game plan. I'm sure they're going to run it more. I'm sure Andy Reid's going to protect Mahomes a good amount in this game, try to make it just an ugly, scrappy game. So I really expect Kelsey to be involved heavily in both running backs, Pacheco and McKinnon. So that kind of does limit the ceiling for a guy like Mahomes. It really comes down to ownership. Like, if Mahomes is going to be like the second or even like the third highest owned guy in terms of like the quarterbacks, I really like that. I really like taking that shot, getting a little bit different here on this 2-game slate. If he's going to be like second or first, I think you can definitely fade him and go to someone else. But that's kind of my whole spiel with Mahomes situation. Obviously, if you don't trust that ankle, the next best 2 are going to be Hurts and Burrow. I'd give the slight edge to Burrow just because he's a little bit, I'd say a little bit of a more pass-first offense. Hurts in the Eagles offense is a little bit more of a run game, a little bit more of a running offense. Burrow is more of that pass-first offense. Obviously, they're going against a little bit better of a matchup as well. Hurts has to face that San Francisco defense. It is at home. The San Fran's defense does give up some points, but they're still clearly one of the best defenses in the league. Obviously, they've made it here because their defense has been very solid, especially, Brock Purdy's play. But yeah, it really comes down to kind of, do you trust Mahomes? If you do, I'd say go with him. If you don't, I'd give this slight edge to Burrow over Hurts, even though I like both of them. I like targeting that San Fran defense. I mean, we saw for a little bit, Dak Prescott was able to kind of move the ball around. Obviously, they kind of failed. It really hurt them with whatever his not running back name, Tony Pollard getting injured. That really hurt them. But I do like Hurts. They're more of a run first team, but he can still air it out. I do expect him to throw the ball a ton more. I like Hurts a good amount, even in that tough matchup. That could be an ugly game, though, between both those teams who do like to run the ball. And then Burrow, obviously bringing it back against Mahomes. He's done great against the Chiefs, as you saw, versus the Chiefs week 13. 30 fantasy points there. He threw 2 touchdowns, 286 yards. So there's a lot to like with Burrow. I'm sure he's going to be the most popular QB in this slate. We'll have to kind of keep updated with ownership percentages. But yeah, in terms of like rankings, I'd put it Burrow, Hurts, Mahomes, Purdy. And then for that reason, I do like, getting risky with Mahomes. And then Brock Purdy, if you want to get to him at 5,300, sure you can. We know the Eagles defense is solid. They tend to kind of funnel teams into running the ball over passing it. And he's been great. I just think his luck is going to run out here soon. As we saw versus Dallas, a pretty decent defense in terms of like rushing the passer. Brock Purdy was not the best. They did get up. They did rely on the running game, which really helped him out. They made a few big plays, but besides that, he wasn't looking, really solid. He really came back down to earth. Now they're going into a game environment here in Philly where it's going to be a tough game environment. It's going to be super loud. He's a rookie quarterback. This is going to be the biggest game of his life here. And he's stepped up, obviously, the whole season so far, but I don't know. I just don't trust him. The price tag's solid. His upside has been there, but I do think it's one of those games where they're going to rely heavily on like Christian McCaffrey in that run game and their defense. And it's hard to trust him airing it out enough to, get 18 to 20 fancy points, if not more. And especially if guys like Burrow, Mahomes, or Hurts, they go for like 25, 30 plus, you really need Purdy to get 20, 22-ish to kind of pay off and make sure you're kind of in that same range as them to be able to, cash, if not, have a good chance of taking down. So for that reason, I just don't trust Purdy right now. He's not in the same class of any 3 of the guys above him. So for that reason, I'm just going to stick to kind of the top 3 guys. And from there, it really just comes down to ownership. So let's kind of wait till tomorrow afternoon to kind of see how the ownership plays out, if we get any more news on Mahomes and that stuff. But moving on to the running back situation here, we have Christian McCaffrey. Now, the running back situation is also very interesting because obviously we have Christian McCaffrey, Joe Mixon, and it really falls off to a bunch of guys who are just kind of, they're like kind of like there. Like some of them get, some run, like a guy like Pacheco, he gets some rushing attempts. Miles Sanders gets rushing attempts, but neither one of them really get involved in the pass game out of the backfield. They're decently cheap. We can go even cheaper to guys like Sameen Pirine. We can go to a guy like Tevin Coleman, who did get activated because Elijah Mitchell might not play. So there's a lot of question marks still going into this slate tomorrow. But obviously, Christian McCaffrey, I do think he'll be the safest. We know he has a very solid ceiling, and we know he's very safe in terms of catching passes out of the backfield. He's going to get the rushing attempts as well. I mean, we saw versus Dallas. That's pretty much his floor game. Obviously, the touchdown did really help, but 17 fantasy points. It's going to be hard for Christian McCaffrey to like completely bust. Maybe this is the spot if, the 49ers offense just completely fails. But I think this is a situation where you don't necessarily need to play Christian McCaffrey. He's going to be a huge part of the offense. With that whole game environment, game script, it could get ugly. Like if they get down, they're going to have to throw the ball more. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey's going to get some dump offs, but I don't know. I don't think it was like last week where you really kind of needed to play Christian McCaffrey. Now it's just more like 50-50 if you want to get to him or not. I do like Joe Mixon a good amount here because he's just one of those running backs where it doesn't matter the game script. If they're up, they're going to rush it with him. If they're down, they're going to pass on the ball a good amount as well. So he's a very, very solid and safe play here. And for that reason, I do like getting into him, especially if you're not going to get a piece of the wide receivers. I do think you need to at least lock in one of those kind of main stars, with that being Joe Mixon. Now, in terms of like the Kansas City running backs, I still prefer getting to Pacheco, even though he's not really involved in that passing game out of the backfield. He's still going to see a decent amount of rushing attempts. He has that ability to break off some big rushes, as we saw versus Jacksonville. Had a huge 39-yard long run that really helped, kind of secure the game and win him the game there. So for that reason, I do think they're going to, rely on the rushing game more. And I do like Pacheco a good amount because I'm sure people are going to, chase McKinnon. they have the past few games. He's absolutely burned them. But kind of with Mahomes getting his ankle injured, I do think people are going to flock to it. They're going to see he had 11 rushing attempts, which really isn't Jerick McKinnon type stuff. What is his name? Edwards-Helaire is still on IR, so, Pacheco will be kind of the main guy. McKinnon will still be that secondary back, but I just don't trust the fish. You really need him to fall in the end zone. And if he does, he still could get outscored like he did in that Seattle game. Only 12.8 fantasy points, caught a touchdown, but that was really it. He didn't see too many touches, so I expect a little bit more touches here for a guy like McKinnon, but I really just prefer getting to Pacheco, who should be a little bit lower owned. We'll have to see if the fish do fall for McKinnon once again. Moving down below that, we do have to keep an eye on Elijah Mitchell. As I said, he might not be good to go. If he's out, I don't mind getting super risky if they say Tevin Coleman's going to be the backup to Christian McCaffrey, because we saw Elijah Mitchell did get some decent run there in those games that they were playing. I mean, they still have Davis Price, but I do think they're going to rely more on a veteran like Tevin Coleman, who does have explosiveness, as we saw at the beginning of the season in that Week 5 game, 8 for 23 with a touchdown, and he got 3 of 3 through 44 yards and a touchdown there. So I do like getting risky if Elijah Mitchell is going to be able to sit, or is going to have to sit, and they say Tevin Coleman will be that backup running back. If they say it's going to be a split backfield, sure, you can still get risky, but I'd really only stick to McCaffrey. That's going to happen. In terms of like the Philadelphia running backs, I really just say stick with Miles Sanders. Obviously, he doesn't have huge upside with the passing game there, but I mean, they're going to run the ball, and he's going to be involved. All he really needs is a touchdown to kind of help you there at 5,200. So I don't mind, going to him. I'm sure he'll be one of the lowest owned running backs just because of the San Fran defense. People are going to want to stack Hurts. They're going to stack AJ Brown, Dallas Goedert. Miles Sanders is kind of the last thought for a lot of people. So if you want to get contrarian and risky, you can definitely go to him. I don't mind that. And then I want to get to Gainwell or Scott. They had big games just because they were, doing whatever they wanted with the Giants. So I don't trust either one of them to get really involved in this offense unless for some reason Philly's down. They could look to one of these two just being better pass catcher backs, but I don't think there's a need to kind of go there yet. P. Ryan, there, he saw a little bit more work just because they're up big. Sure, you can take a dart throw on him, but I'd rather just trust, sticking with Joe Mixon. And that's really it for the running back situation. For the wide receiver situation, I really, really love Chase and AJ Brown. I mean, they're going to be super, super popular, but it's hard not to get to Chase, who's just going to see a massive amount of targets, as we saw here. 8 versus Buffalo, but then 12, 13, 12, 13, 15 before that. Like 5 straight weekends, 12 or more targets. I mean, he's Joe Burrow's favorite target. I really, really like Chase. Really, really like AJ Brown. He was super disappointing for me last game. As you can see here, 5.2. He absolutely screwed me. His second worst game of the season, but he said he wants the ball. I do think they're going to get him the ball. They're going to need him. He'll be the key to this offense here, if they can get him the ball, get him involved. So really like those two wide receivers. In terms of the other wide receivers, you can get to Devontae Smith. Like, even if AJ Brown has a big game, Devontae Smith still has a very solid floor. Like, they do like throwing him a good amount of screens and wide receiver passes to the side. So he does have a safe floor with that, with the catches. He's a big play wide receiver, but I do think I'm going to give the edge to AJ Brown for that $200 price difference. Deebo Samuel is there. He just looks okay. Like, he had the big game versus Seattle, but versus Dallas, a tougher defense. He only got 9.6. He did hurt that ankle a little bit, but he should be good to go. I just don't trust Brock Purdy enough to get to them, and for that reason, I do think these San Francisco guys are going to be a little bit lower owned, so they could be contrarian, nice pivot plays. But I just don't have any interest in those San Francisco guys right now. Good amount of interest in T. Higgins. If you want to make the pivot off of Jamar Chase, don't mind going to T. Higgins here, who had a decent game, caught a touchdown versus Kansas City in Week 13. I think when they played last year, he also had solid games against Kansas City, so he's a very solid pivot play off of a chalky Jamar Chase. I do think the guys on the Kansas City side, especially with the injury to Mahomes, they'll be very solid contrarian plays as well. I'd rather go to them than the San Francisco 49ers guys, especially if you like Juju, MVS, even Kadarius Toney. If they're all going to go lower owned compared to like a Debo, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, I'd rather get to the Kansas City guys. I trust that passing game more than I do with the 49ers. And so for that reason, I do have a good amount of interest in like a Juju, in like MVS, in Kadarius Toney. If the one who would stick out to me would be Toney. They do like utilizing him a little bit more recently compared to the other two. But the other two there, I don't mind them. But for right now, I do like Kadarius Toney there at 3,700. I don't mind Tyler Boyd. He's another solid pivot play. Not been very involved the past few games. He's kind of obviously that third, fourth option. Sometimes the fifth option as we've seen. So I don't mind him. And that's really it. I don't think there's a need to get to like any of these dart throw plays. Like McCall Harmon might be back. If he's out, once again, Toney's role is solidified. If he's in, sure, you can take a dart throw on him. He's an explosive wide receiver, but we'll have to wait and see for that. So for right now, I'm just going to throw Toney in there. And then for the tight end situation, we got obviously Kelsey at the top. If you're going to play Mahomes, you're obviously going to want to play Kelsey there at 7,800. I mean, we saw what he did versus Jacksonville. He should be in line for a huge, huge game here. As I said, there's not a lot of targets to throw the ball to, so they're really going to focus on that running game and throwing it to Kelsey. So I do like him a good amount. In terms of the rest of the tight ends, once again, I just don't trust George Kittle enough. You can definitely go to him. He should probably be the second favorite target alongside Christian McCaffrey for Brock Purdy, no matter what the game environment and script is. So you can definitely go to him. But I prefer getting to a guy like Kelsey or getting to Goddard and Hurst. Hurst is a very solid price tag there. He had a very solid game there versus Buffalo. He's going to get at least a few targets a game. You just really need him to get in the end zone. But that $3,000 price tag, I don't mind going to him. Fortson did get elevated off of IR, but I don't think that's going to affect much for the other situation. So, yeah, I mean, the tight end situation is really just, 3-4 guys at most, and that's it. Kind of like the quarterback situation. Like, I do like Goddard a good amount. Obviously, the ownership's going to be Kelsey, Goddard, Kittle, and Hurst. So do with that as you will. But right now, my focus for tight ends is really just going to be Kelsey, Goddard, and Hurst. With the edge, obviously, to Kelsey, just because he's got massive, massive ceiling and upside. Goddard's is a little bit, I'd say probably obviously the second highest in terms of the three guys I liked. But there are some games where it's like he kind of seems just like stuck at like 9 targets is the most he's gotten in a game so far this season. So he's not going to see a ton of targets, but he's been productive when he gets some. Does have that touchdown upside. So if you want to I don't mind getting riskier and going to a Hurst over Goddard, for the price difference. And they do have like similar upside. It's like, unless there's a really weird game script, I don't think there's going to be a game script where Goddard gets more than 10 plus targets unless he's absolutely killing them. But I just think they're going to throw the ball to A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. They're going to run it. Goddard was going to see his normal 5 to 8 targets, and that's really it. So right now, main focus is obviously Kelsey, and that's going to be it for me. Moving on to the defense, obviously there's really no correlation. And now we get, multiple defenses where every defense kind of looks good. Like obviously 49ers going to Philadelphia, a team that does turn it over. They do have some bad games. You can target them. You can target the Eagles defense with, Brock Purdy throwing the ball. Chiefs, obviously Joe Burrow. It's going to be the riskiest defense to, target. So I don't mind going to them, especially if it's going to be the lowest owned. We know Joe Burrow can definitely throw, turn over the ball. The Chiefs do have some good defensive linemen. So Chris Jones. So I don't mind going to the Chiefs here. Bengals, obviously 2,300. These two look like the best plays in terms of defenses. Just going the cheaper route because it gives you a little bit more leeway room to get to other guys. Now, obviously, with this lineup, you can't really fit in another piece. Like if we go to a flex play, let's go to someone down here. Let's see here. Juwan Jennings. That's just gross. You do, stack 3 guys there, but then it doesn't give you much it doesn't even allow you to pay up for a running back. So I think to complete this lineup, but in terms of like my core plays, let's just go with my core plays real fast. My core plays are going to be Joe Mixon, AJ Brown, and it's going to be Joe Mixon, AJ Brown, and probably Kelsey for me as the core plays. These 3 core plays are going to be my core plays for tomorrow. I may add 1 or 2 more. You can follow me on Twitter for that. But as of right now, these are going to be my core plays. Joe Mixon, love either game script they get for this game. I think he's going to have the ability to get you there. AJ Brown, I do think they're going to be heavily involved in this game. And then Kelsey, for obvious reasons, he's the main part of the offense. He's like 90% of the offense. Even with the injured Mahomes, I do like him a good amount. If I was to lean towards a 4th, core play, I'm deciding between Pacheco and him and T. Higgins. I'm still going back and forth between T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. Like, I might go to Higgins just because I do think people are just going to jam in Jamar Chase. Obviously, he looks fantastic, but I like, getting riskier, pivoting off the high ownership. So I think for right now, I'm going to throw it in T. Higgins, and that's going to be kind of my core 4 plays for tomorrow's games. Obviously, there's some injury news with like Hardman with Elijah Mitchell that could definitely change up a few like dart throw plays that you can make. As I mentioned, like Coleman, riding the Tony there at 3,700. So, make sure to stay updated with me on Twitter. Hit that like button, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.